for the breaker.
Okay, we're ready whenever you are.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'll call the meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Andrea on the motion, Supervisor Bruno on the second. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the minutes of the previous meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Kevin, you want to begin with Parks and Rec?
Yes, we'll start with Parks and Rec if that's okay.
All right. Why don't you take this one at a time? What would he have for us?
Okay, so the first request that we have today is to backfill the naturalist position. Madeline Wilson, who was the previous naturalist, she got I guess a better paying job, more towards what she wanted to do in Burlington, Vermont. So she has left us. So this is to backfill that position of a naturalist at Up Yonder Farm.
All righty. Why don't we bring this to the floor for discussion? Is there a motion to bring this forward for discussion?
So move.
Mr. Leggett on the motion, Mr. Strau on the second. Thank you, gentlemen. Discussion. Any questions for Mr. Hajos? Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman Conover. Kevin, is this need to be immediately filled?
Yeah, I'd like to get approval. I think it's going to take us a little while to find somebody to get into the position. I want to find the right fit up there. Typically, the naturalist position, this is the kind of the beginning position into Up Yonder. It'll most likely be, if there's a college grad or somebody in the environmental field that would like to come into this, hopefully with some type of educational background, because that's some of the requirements. So I don't expect, this will be, I think I had an October 1st as part of the notice to fill, but I expect it's going to take us a little while to find somebody in there. The other part of this is, and I was explaining this the other day during a budget meeting, the naturalist position up there is not just to kind of put on the programs for Up Yonder. Both the naturalist and the director up there all work with the programs within the schools, as well as, for the most part, they do all the maintenance on the grounds at Up Yonder. That would include painting, mowing, weed whacking, cleaning the facilities up there. They basically maintain it all. So with the new arena, with this pandemic going on, we're kind of switching the way we do our programs up there. We're trying to either go to everything online because right now schools are not, at least at this point, they're not doing any field trips, so they wouldn't be coming to Up Yonder. So we're trying to do more outreach. Whether we can go to schools is still a question that we're trying to find out. What we're trying to do is go to schools and do programs outside for them, and not necessarily have our guys inside the classroom. But the other thing is they're working on a lot of new programs or presentations that they can basically film and do online and provide to the schools as well. So I'd hate to cut it down to just the two people. And then if somebody's out sick or somebody's out on vacation, now I'm down to one. It's a lot of work. The farm itself to upkeep is a lot of work. They've done a significant amount of work over the last couple of weeks up there just for the maintaining of it. But yeah, I don't see it happening right away, but giving me the approval, we can put it out on the street and see who we can get to come in there. But again, I don't expect before October 1st to having somebody in there.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hajos?
Chairman,
Supervisor Bramer.
thank you, Chairman. I popped off for a second in between the meetings. What's the October 1st date about? I'm, again, like I said yesterday in the sheriff's meeting, concerned about us putting, more cost on us during this particular time.
That was the Mr. Hajos's estimate on how long it would probably take to fill the naturalist position, at least through he wouldn't have it filled probably or be through the process till October 1st or so.
Okay. Is this a part-time position like the sheriff's thing was, hourly?
No, this is not a part-time position.
No, this is a salaried position. You might want to indicate to everyone, Kevin, how many positions there are how few there are at Up Yonder.
Again, as I stated, there's only 3 positions up there. 2 of them are the nationals position, and one of them is the director. And again, these salaries up there, Supervisor Bramer, are paid through the trust.
Up Yonder has a trust. When the property was conveyed, they set up a financial trust, and the dividends from the trust help support the budget at Up Yonder.
Okay.
Did I say that correctly, Kevin?
Yes, and as far as, Supervisor Bramer, going back to your original statement, is it adding more money? It's not adding any more money. It's what's budgeted up there and what the trust pays.
I know, but I'm anticipating our budget officer is going to say to us, we need to make 20% cuts across the board, and just, January 1 is not that far away. So to hire someone October 1 and then turn around and tell them we can't have them there is sort of crappy, if you ask me. But if you're saying to me the trust will pay for it outside of whatever Kevin does it as budget officer, that they should be fine, stable in their position. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. Did Kevin say anything?
Sure. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, we did go over this budget one of the days last week. I don't remember exactly which day it was, but the proposed budget for 2021 is balanced. In fact, I think the revenue slightly exceeds the expenses, and this position is included in that budget.
Right.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor McGowan, just to chime in, we also are coming into our winter season up there. So I don't know how busy Up Yonder Farm is usually in the winter time.
Mr. Hajos?
Again, I'll go back to saying that although we're not having schools come there, we are trying to gear up. I mean, this is a whole new arena for us. So we're trying to gear up to do presentations for schools. So that's what they will work on. Our busiest time of the year typically up there is going into the spring season. So this will allow them to pull a lot of those programs together, not knowing what it's going to be like or how they're going to go forward with it moving into the spring.
Any other questions for Superintendent Hajos? Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of filling the position signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. What's the next item we have here, Kevin?
Next item, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Benway.
Benway. Tim, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item I have is a viewing scope. It was donated by the Friends of Up Yonder. I would like just to have a letter sent saying thank you. The scope is here for Up Yonder, and it will be placed at the summit up near our display board of the lake.
All right, Chair, I'll entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration.
Supervisor McGowan?
Mr. McGowan, thank you. Second, Mr. Bruno on the second. A big shout out to the Friends of Up Yonder. They put that bench up there. Frank, they stole your design from Stony Creek. They liked your bench on your trail at Stony Creek and modeled it after that. And then they created a little sitting area with the viewing scope. And I think there's a map as well. Is there not, Tim?
Correct.
There's like a pedestal map there. So that it creates a nice little quiet respite type of spot. In the view of the lake, of course, from up there is spectacular. And if you have never been up there, I highly recommend it, especially in the fall. Oh, by the way, so well, it's certainly a big shout out to the Friends of Up Yonder. And this is at least the second project, is it not, Tim? Didn't they do or are doing a beehive?
Correct. That has been installed. They have done the 2 wooden benches, pressure treated on the summit, a beehive for our auditorium, and now the scope.
Wow. All righty then. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of accepting the donation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. What do we have next, Kevin?
The next is asking for the railroad budget to be amended again. We have a shortfall as far as utilities again. Originally, I asked to have the money from Revolution Rail put these bills, but they are doing them in 6-month increments. So at this point, I don't have enough until all their payments come through. So we're asking for $4,600.
All right, let's bring this forward so we can have some discussion. Mr. Stroud, Mr. Leggett on the second. Thank you, gentlemen. Discussion, Mr. Leggett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Conover. So then, Tim, once we get paid by Revolution Rail, what happens?
Once we got their contract, it states in that contract that we had initially thought it was going to be in 2 installments to have the entire amount. They are doing it in 6 equal installments. So the bills are coming in faster than the installments they are giving the county. So I need to pay for utilities and taxes.
Right, so that covers the gap. Does that then get replenished back into the contingent fund at the end of the year?
Supervisor Leggett, let me add in on that. The original contract, I believe, for this year with Referral, I think was $30,000. When it was eventually prorated down because of their late start and what they were going to be using, I don't recall what that bottom line number was. It wasn't enough to cover the cost of all the utilities, whether it's utilities, water and sewer taxes, property tax for the station, or for the railroad. So with that being said, whatever they even pay us this year is still not going to cover the cost of all the utilities and taxes that we have to pay for this year. We only budgeted last year when we went into the budget season for 6 months going into this year, thinking that maybe we would have a possible contract with couple of the other rail individuals that responded to the RFP, but that never came to fruition. And RevRail, started late because of the pandemic. So their revenue that came in from them was still not going to cover the cost for the rest of this year. Moving forward in the next year, I think based on them doing some minor maintenance and the utility and taxes for next year, I think the revenue that is generated by RevRail to come in next year should bring enough in to cover the cost of the utilities.
Thank you. That explains it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Tim or Kevin? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the budget amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Information for discussion and review, Swede Fire Tower in town of Hague. That's what we have here, gentlemen.
I'm going to have Tim give you an update on what we've done so far and where we're at.
At this point, the trail has been fully cut out, laid out by lime timber. We have actually cut it, signed it. It's about to close for their season for September 10th to December. So we will not be back in there for the next 3 to 4 months. I asked for permission to keep working in the trail system while it was closed down, just for Parks and Recs to be in there. And the answer was no. So we're going to, in the next 2 weeks, be pretty much shut down and start back up if weather lets in December. If not, it's going to have to wait until spring. But we're all set, ready to bring materials to the tower. Everything's been cut out around the tower. We're ready to move forward. The signs have been made, just not placed until it's a full working trail open to the public. That's my update.
So that's just an update. We don't need any action on this at this moment.
Correct.
All right. All right, let's move into referrals and pending items. We tabled the request to authorize extension of the agreement with Adirondack Safari. Kevin, do you want to give us, or the county attorney, would you like to give us an update on this?
Yeah, I'll touch on it real quick, and then I guess I'll turn it over to Mary. I think from the last committee meeting we had, the discussion was either a termination with them or possibly amending it. I think the recommendation moving forward was to terminate the contract with them, but I think the committee has to agree to it. And if we did terminate the contract with them, then if we decided to move forward next year to put it out, we would basically have to put it out to get to bid again or for a proposal again. But I'll let Mary jump in on it, and maybe she can fill me in from there, or fill us in.
Mary?
Yeah, I have nothing to add other than what Kevin said. I mean, the committee needs to make a decision, and then we'll execute whatever decision the committee makes.
Mr. Leggett?
Thank you, Supervisor, Chairman. So if we just, if we terminate it, it makes a lot more work for the county altogether, doesn't it?
Kevin, you want to respond?
I would say, and Mary, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably the easier route to go. If we terminate the contract with them, we eliminate it. We already, if we decide to do some type of glamping again there in the future, put an RFP out for the facility, we already have an RFP kind of in place to do that. It may take a little bit of revamping, but I think that to simplify it would be easy just to terminate the contract with Adirondack Safari, and then we could put out a new RFP come probably September or maybe October, have something in here by November, December, if somebody chooses to do it. If not, then I guess going into next year, we'll look for different avenues for renting the facility.
Ryan?
I'd just like to add, I would like to, I think that it's an untapped resource, and I would like to see an RFP for any recreational activities there in addition to just glamping. There's a lot we could be doing with that place.
Yeah, Andrea?
Mary, are we on really solid ground for termination?
Yeah, so it has to be termination for cause, but they haven't met any of the benchmarks that were put in the contract for this year, including payment at this point. So, I mean, I think there's a couple ways that we could terminate the contract.
Does follow up, please, Chairman?
Andrea, go right ahead.
Does our lack of response or our lack of movement on this harm that argument in any way?
No, not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Straugh?
Has anyone communicated in any way with Adirondack Safari about their future, or in any way? Has anybody talked to them?
Yeah, I believe that the county attorney's office did communicate with representatives of Safari, and Kevin, you may have some information as well relative to things that have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what the county attorney. I know that Mr. Twilliger, I think, has talked to him. Maybe Mary has as well. My indication is I'm not sure what they're going to do going into the future. I believe there's been some talk that they've sold off some of their material, although I'm not, it's only hearsay. I can't predict that. So I'm not sure if they're even going to do it again next year. But again, the easiest thing for us, I think, is just to terminate. And then, as Ryan said, we put out a RFP for anything at the fairgrounds and then see what happens to them.
Yeah. Any other discussion, any other questions for Mary or Superintendent Hajos?
Mr. Supervisor, are we being asked to take any action at this time?
Yes, I think that we should have an action as recommended to terminate the existing agreement for cause, and then to let the staff put together an RFP if that's, and then come back to the committee with the kind of RFP that Ryan has articulated for whatever recreational uses we may wish to have there. That would be the kind of recommendation I think, the kind of path I think we should be on right here. So yes, it should be a recommendation, a motion here.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, if I see this right, there is no activities planned until the summer of 2022, the year after next. Is that correct? There is no interest for them to come back in 2021.
Well, that's a big question mark. I think they're, speaking for myself, I think that the reason I think the recommendation is a solid one is if we forego the revenue for this year, they wouldn't be in violation of their existing agreement until failure to pay us in June of next year. that's when the first payment would be due. And so we would lose all of 2021. They would basically maintain their lease and their encumbrance of the property through the end of the term of the lease.
Okay.
And that's for me, that's the primary issue, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So this way we expunge, if you will, the encumbrance of the property under the lease for and then we go out and we take a fresh look at this and consider some fresh proposals.
Oh, that's good info. Thank you.
Andrea, was that a second or was that a motion?
I'll make that motion. That
We have
we
a motion.
terminate.
Terminate the existing arrangement with Safari. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Bruno. Discussion, Mr. Stroud.
Yeah. So if we're terminating the contract with Adirondack Safari right now, 2020, and we're putting out an RFP, I'm interpreting that as we perhaps could have some kind of activity there and revenue there in 2021. I'm just wondering why we would skip 2021 if we're terminating the contract.
don't think we-
and
we're not
that's
skipping.
effective now.
No, we're not skipping 2021. If it's the wish of the board to go back out, the commissioner said he can go out this fall for 2021 and beyond.
Yeah. Well, I thought somebody said something about we wouldn't be able to do anything until 2022. And I was thinking that perhaps we could do something for 2021. Okay, as long as we have that understanding.
I understand.
Okay.
And it'll give us a chance to talk to the supervisor of Warrensburg as well. This is located in Warrensburg, and I think all of us might like the opportunity maybe to talk to Kevin about some of his thoughts about the grounds and the program going forward. But we do have a motion and a second. If we could have further discussion on the motion, Ms. Bramer.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairman. What exactly does the lease say as far as our ability to terminate on them?
I think like most leases, I'm pulling from my memory now, but I'm basically for cause. And they did not pay us the revenue that they were supposed to pay us in June of this year. They requested that to be waived. And we have not taken any formal action on it. This would be the formal action we would be taking. Is that right, Mary? That would be one of the grounds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the lease in front of me, so I'm not really willing to speak to the exact language of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was looking for though, is because you said also, Mary, that there were other terms that they didn't, conditions they hadn't met. So I just wanted to hear what those were too, under the terms of the lease.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know we sat down and looked at it and we felt confident there were a couple of things that we could point to terminate the lease.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a business relationship we have with an entity. This is their income, their business and such. Are we taking all the steps that a landlord and a tenant would do to keep everybody apprised? I don't want to yank out the carpet from under a business without them really being on board or aware of what our actions might be.
Right. Mr. Hager, you want to comment on that?
I can say that the county attorney's office has already reached out to them once and discussed this with them. I'm not sure how far the discussions went, but again, it will be communicated to them that we would move forward with terminating the lease and that we would put out an RFP again. And if they so choose to bid on it again, then if they are the ones that submit something for the RFP, that they could use the facility again, or we could have somebody else.
Right.
How long was this particular lease good for?
It was a yearly. I want to say it had some type of clause in there for 5 years, but the renewals had to be done it had to come through DPW committee every year or through the superintendent every year of whether or not we're going to move forward for the following year. So, but this one was to end 2022.
That's correct. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. So we can just choose not to renew for 2021? We can just choose not to have it rather than,
We can terminate.
Right.
What about the renew?
Well,
I guess I would like to know that we talked to them and said, if you don't pay us for this year, I mean, how are they going to pay us? That we're going to yank this contract out from underneath them for the rest of the time. I don't know.
well, that's an interesting characterization, but I mean, the fact of the matter is that the payment to the county was a payment that had no relationship to occupancy. It was a flat payment of the,
Right, for
the
use of
reservation,
the land.
the reservation of our land.
Yeah.
And it had no relationship to occupancy. What they requested from us was that we waive their payments for this year. And then they wanted to tack on a year or two on the other end of the arrangement. And,
Right.
I just,
So what did they say to that, all of that? When we went back with the, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at the notes from before what we said.
Right. My big concern that I communicated to the attorney was that I didn't want to wait until June of next year to find out that they weren't going to be operating in June of next year, and find out that maybe they might want to consider operating in 2022. That we had to have some timeliness if we were going to waive the payment for this year. I don't know on what basis we would do that, but other than perhaps COVID, I suppose. But that then we would find ourselves with basically the county fairgrounds being encumbered until 2022. And I just found all of that, and I thought the committee would find all of that really unacceptable.
So they did tell us what exactly did they say to Mary?
They talked to Bob, and I think what they said to Bob is that they were agreeable to letting us know by by December of this year, and they indicated that they were also acceptable of the lease arrangement, clearly going to an annualized basis. So they're agreeable to almost everything.
So
but I think the recommendation.
Why are we terminating on them?
Well, I think that's the recommendation that we've had from staff, is that to kind of clear the decks on this and go back out, and because there may be things that we want or do not want in that lease that are in the existing lease. We may have learned much over the last few years. Andrea?
Thank you. If we don't terminate, then the only alternative I see here is us being okay with not accepting any payment for this year. And does anybody really want to go down that road as a precedent?
Didn't we allow, I mean, other people who didn't use like the village park, we didn't make them pay for it.
But we were,
use it.
But we were able to, I mean, if somebody else came along, we would have been able to allow them to use it.
We asked them that that they would agree to let us use the fairgrounds for anything else that came up in 2020. Did they agree to that?
They were generally agreeable to almost anything, given the fact that they hadn't paid us and that they were clearly in violation of the lease. So
I don't know. Okay.
I'm just uncomfortable. I'm just uncomfortable with the whole program. I think that if we terminate without prejudice, and then they would have the right to reintroduce their program, should we do an RFP, and anyone else could introduce a program as well. It just I think refreshes this in a certain way. And also we might want to put some things in the lease that maybe safeguard the county property as well. Andrea?
I agree with the chairman. We're not kicking them to the curb. We're inviting them. We're taking a step back, taking a breath, and inviting them to come back and talk about going forward and what conditions. Nobody saw a pandemic coming.
Right,
know,
so
so
why
we
are we
might need-
punishing them? We had an agreement with them until 2022 or whatever it was. And we're cutting them short on that because of the pandemic.
We had a renewable agreement with them.
I'm not hearing that exactly. It says in the notes that we were going to check if that caveat was not already included in the agreement, that we had an ability to get out every year.
I thought Kevin just said that was in there.
I have the lease agreement right in front of me. If you give me a moment, I can kind of take a look through it and see where that was stated.
Okay, well, then we're right back where we were a month or so ago, but
Mr. Chairman?
that's okay. Kevin, why don't you do that? And Mr. Stroud?
Yes, I think I mentioned it last time, and some of your conversation touched upon it this time, in that New York State is asking us to be very liberal with the way we conduct business with our employees, with the people who are renting, with businesses that couldn't stay open, all related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So could the Adirondack Safari make the case that we unfairly terminated them because they were only trying to deal with the COVID crisis like everybody else, and therefore their termination by Warren County was unfair and unjustified? I could see that argument being made.
Well, actually, I think camping was allowed at a certain point. I don't want to pick the exact date that it was allowed, but it wasn't prohibited throughout the pandemic period. But that's another issue, I suppose, for another day. Ryan?
I make a suggestion. We've talked about this issue ad nauseum for months. Can we have the staff that are on the call read the contract while we move on and discuss other business, and then return to this so that we can finally make a decision that's informed?
But I mean, I agree. We can sit around for whatever period of time the committee wants to sit around for. I mean, we can sit around until January if you want. We can sit around until June. I mean, that's up to the committee. Andrea?
Do I need to withdraw my motion?
Only if you wish to.
Well, in order for us to move on with other discussion.
Okay. Or we vote on the motion. That's what we're here for. I mean, it's totally up to you.
I'm ready to vote.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
I'd like to chime in, Supervisor McGowan here.
I hear, is that Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, in one of the many things that I do, I've kind of leaned into helping out people camping that their units have issues while they're here. And I've had the opportunity of cruising through some parks there. And I have to say, I'm just amazed, and especially the big one up there in Fort Ann, the amount of rented sites has to be close to 80% on 600 sites, and the trailers. And if you talk to any of the trailer salespeople, they're record sales. And I don't see where glamping, when camping came back out, why it couldn't have had a very successful season as all these other campgrounds have had. So, you know, I feel you are right, Mr. Chairman, of you know, doing this and sending it back out. We did not get our payment, and that had nothing to do with renting out the sites or not. That it's the agreement we had, and they made no attempts. You know, so I think we do it with the prejudice. We should be with no prejudice that we should be covered. And it gives us an opportunity to put it back out there for next year, maybe a different group, or like I said, be able to clean up some of the stuff that we didn't like. So I'd like to keep the motion going there. Thank you. Did I shock you all, or did we lock up here?
They're all muted.
The chairman is stuck or something. Is Bob with you, Mary? That he might, did he
Yeah,
have?
we have all the answers to whatever questions are outstanding. I just didn't really hear a question to us. It kind of sounded more rhetorical.
My question to you was, could you please say to me what is in the contract about the termination? You said you didn't have it in front of you.
I can tell you what it says in the contract.
Awesome. Thank you.
Which one is 2000?
It's number 18, Mary, in the agreement. It says either party may terminate this agreement for a cause upon 30 days written notice to the other.
Correct.
It further goes on to state this agreement may be extended up to 4 additional terms, to generally coincide with the dates referenced herein from summer 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 upon mutual agreement of the parties and with the concurrence of the superintendent of public works.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Aegis.
I'm not an attorney, just reading.
So Kevin, your concurrence? Your recommendation is to terminate?
Terminate the agreement and we'll put out an RFP and they're more than welcome to bid on it.
Okay.
Can I make a request? I don't see the chairman, so I'm just going to talk. Instead of saying that we're going to terminate, can we just say we agree to not let them pay for 2020 and we have agreed not to go forward with them for 2021?
What's the difference there?
Explain your difference.
Well, I would like to give them some concessions that they did not just leave us high and dry. I mean, there was a pandemic. I guess it's semantics.
Mary?
And how we are looking to, say, okay, you couldn't pay this year, fine. We are waiving the fees for this year due to the pandemic, and we are deciding not to renew the contract going forward.
Mary, are there any pitfalls with that change in language?
With what Supervisor Bramer is suggesting?
Rather than using the phrase terminate?
Yeah, I think it would actually be a good idea to reach out to them and just ask if by mutual agreement we can agree to terminate the contract. We're still going to say terminate, but it'll be on agreement by both parties, because that way you're not really assigning fault to either party. But of course, I would do whatever the committee directed us to do.
So can I change my motion to say that we will accept a mutual termination?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm gonna call the vote. Ron's not here, so I'm gonna call the vote.
Before you do that, can I ask a question from the board?
Oh yeah, Kevin, is that you?
Kevin Garrity.
Okay.
I'd just like to know, have we had written communications with them, or are we just assuming? I mean, he didn't pay, correct?
He did not pay, and we have had no written communications. It's all been by telephone.
Okay, so he didn't pay. So is he in violation of the contract the way it's written?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other problem we had is when Mr. Zibro wanted to move his event later on, we couldn't let him because we had this contract with Safari, correct?
Well, Kevin, hey, Josie, you want to address that?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so my thing is you always should do it in writing. So I would write him and follow up with whatever, phone him and follow up in writing what you want to do. I mean, I don't think he wants to come back, but that's all conjecture and that's all hearsay. Get it in writing. And if he's not going to make the payment, then you have a reason to terminate the contract. Give him a shot. Write him. Give him 30 days to pay it. I mean, I'm not a lawyer either. Right?
He just plays one on television. Ryan?
Well,
Clarification. If they don't agree to mutually terminate, We still want this thing terminated, right?
Well, I don't think you can let him off the hook from paying if that's what he agreed to. And you're certainly going to flush him out to say yay or nay, I want to come back or I don't want to come back.
I'd just like not to be back here talking about this 30 days from now. We've been talking about it since May, and we've wasted so much time on it.
Yeah, just send him a letter, say, it's going to happen.
Am I back in charge, Andrea?
You
Sorry about
are.
that. I got cut off. Go ahead. You want to speak, Andrea?
I'd like to amend my motion then that we approach Adirondack Safari, asking them if they would like to mutually terminate, and we need a response within 30 days. Is that reasonable? So put it in language so we can move this forward, and then go to RFP if we need to.
Okay. Mr. Bruno, I think you were the second on the original motion. If our memory serves me, are you prepared to amend your motion? Your
Yes.
second?
Yes, I agree.
Amanda, was that Mr. Bruno on the second? It was. Okay, good. All right, we have a new motion and a second. Hopefully we can move along here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. The next item that was put out here was lime timber. There was some concern about paying lime timber for the right to utilize their property. I believe it was for snowmobiles. Kevin, do you want to update us on this, or Tim?
I can. So based on the last committee meeting, it was a request to go back to lime timber and see if they would reduce the fee, not charge us a fee at all. And they came back and said, no, that's the fee. And it is what it is. So they're not willing to knock out the fee or reduce the fee. And I mean, I really don't want to say this, but basically their language was, you don't need to use our property. So that's where they stand. And so they're not going to change. They will continue to charge us a fee if we continue to move forward with them.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the committee regarding this? Mr. Stroud?
I'm somewhat bothered by the fact that we have to pay a fee, and an exorbitant one, I think. And, if this really is a public access to the rest of our trail and it's part of a connection, and we can make that argument, we can probably make the argument to do a taking. So if we pay them per year, that's going to probably go into the assessment of the taking price that, they lost potential income for so many years because the county is taking this piece of property, or at least taking in the easement. So I just wonder if we've explored that option.
Mr. Hajos?
We've had this lease with Adirondack or lime timber for decades. And there is no connection to this to any other trails except their trails. This is just a trail system that they allow us to use, but there is no connection to any other trail using this piece of property.
So we basically have merit in proceeding with the taking if we desire to do so, or at least taking an easement.
Well, you may be correct, but what I'd like to do is if we could resolve the issue of whether we wish to lease this or not lease this for this winter. I think that's the question at hand, is it not? And Ms. Bramer?
Is there a particular snowmobile group that uses this and maintains it, and do they reimburse the county for this cost?
The Hague Snow Goers, and actually, I believe through the $9,000 that the county gives them, they could use that money. New York State funded money, the grant and aid program cannot use money for leased lands. Lime Timber will not do an agreement with a private entity other than a recreational easement with Warren County for the complete trail system. It is insured by NYSA, they call it, the New York Snowmobile Association. Other than that, it just brings them over to J Palm location, that kind of recreational area. It brings them across Route 8, basically, is what it does. It brings them from one side of Route 8 to the other. Without that piece, they stop and they stay right, New Hague Road, all that area down through there, Summit Road. So it's an extension of their trail system.
But as Kevin said, it's not part of the county's trail system. So
It's not, what I said, Supervisor Bramer, is it's not a connection. There's no connection from that trail to something else. It's just a connection to use this property to ride around on those trails that are there, period.
Yeah.
Mr. Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I'm looking at the Hague Snow Goers trail map, does this basically go from the town hall of Hague and is the trail S89? And does it connect with trail 8C, which is whatever that's part of?
It would come out along Fly Brook Road, down through Woodsboro, goes out towards the lake itself, Jay's Pond.
Of course it does. Supervisor Stroud?
How long has the public used this trail? Do we know? Have we established any public rights by using it for X number of years?
I could reach out to the owner.
Well, the owner's not going to give you the correct answer. I think legal would have to take a look at that. How long has this been used by the public? I mean, I think this segment of the trail is used by the public year round, not just for snowmobiling. Bicyclists, hikers. How long has the public been using this stretch of the trail?
This trail is only used for snowmobiles, not used for hikers or anything else. It's a snowmobile club trail.
I think I know some bikers that have been using it. Okay.
It's also the property that part of this property up there is also hunting property as well. If bikers are using it, they're not using it with permission.
Mr. Chairman, do we know, Supervisor McGowan here, do we know how many average people use that on the winter? And I know that the past couple winters around here have been a little insufficient for snowmobiling.
You don't get data like that.
But and I hate to say that because I know it's good around here, but I mean that's just a lot of money, and I think we're getting bullied to use it. So that's all I wanted to say. I just want to know, if we're doing it for 200 people, I could see the money that it would generate to offset the cost. But it's like 50 people that might use it for the 3 weeks that we might be open because of the snow. It's been poor. I have a problem with that, and I'm a snowmobiler.
Well, what's the pleasure of the committee? I mean, is what you're saying that do we want to reach out to the snowmobile club, ask them what the priority of this trail is and how important it is? And I'd prefer to do something like that than to end up with a room full of people very upset because winter's here, we get a good snowfall and they can't use this leg of this trail. I mean, people should keep in mind that the thousands of miles of snowmobile trails in this state are very little of it's publicly owned. These are
881 miles to be exact.
What's that?
881 miles to be exact. Now, a mile more, a mile less.
Right. And you're talking thousands. And so it's the goodwill of property owners and arrangements with property owners and however they come about that allow us to put together this recreational asset. So I think we should be careful before we we elect not to not do this. So I would ask Tim to, if it's all right with everyone, to move this along, to reach out to the Snowmobile Club to ascertain their take on the importance of this trail. I think I know what the answer is, but, and Tim, you can also ask them about level of use and the kind of questions you've heard here today. Is that reasonable?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
And I think we need to do this ASAP. I know you're not thinking about snow, but.
No, I have actually a meeting the 31st with Lime Timber and that president over this tract of land.
Okay, very good, very good. And then if you could report back, you don't need to wait for a committee meeting. You can report back to the full board those discussions via email or any reasonable way you choose. And also make sure that the county administrator is also plugged into this matter.
Understood.
Is that reasonable for everyone that we proceed like that? Okay, good.
Yes.
And with that, oh yes, we had this Megan Seeley, but I'm not sure do you have anything further on this at this time, Kevin?
I don't. I just want to kind of give the committee an update. So Mrs. Seeley came last month to present to the committee regarding the forest school to be held at Upyanda. She provided a lot of information. She also didn't necessarily have a proposal for that meeting, but she did pass on a proposal shortly after that meeting, which I had Amanda pass on to all the supervisors. I received quite a few comments back from only one or two supervisors, but some of those comments were, should we be having a school there? Should we be, in the business of possibly narrowing this program down to only certain people who might be able to afford it and not others? So one of the other questions that came up, which I thought was a very, very good question, and this is, I think, what I put back to Mrs. Healy is, she wanted a salary as part of her proposal. She wanted some county benefits, and in the times that we are in now with the pandemic, I just don't see, that's adding another person basically onto Upyanda. So with some of the questions that I proposed back to her is I basically said, maybe we can come up with a different type of agreement where she could still have her forest school, which doesn't necessarily use any of our buildings. It's the forest school is literally what it is. It's an outdoor program. The only time that they don't hold a program, like she said, is it's severe weather. But for the most part, they're outdoors. They're typically 12-week type of programs. But when I had looked at her proposal, a 12-week or even 24-week program, covering the cost of her salary if she was a county employee, it just didn't make sense. The numbers weren't there. But I had reached out to her and asked her the question, and I haven't had a response back from her yet, that maybe she could just lease our facility, lease the grounds, be able to use it for her own forest school. I think that would benefit. We already have a kind of a Schedule A in place for whether it's parks, tracks onto the bike path or other areas, the fairgrounds or down to the hatchery, to use our facilities down there. Typically, it's a fee associated with it. We don't know what that fee would be necessarily yet, but I think that would be kind of the route, at least in my mind, might be a better suited, is that she could have her school at our facility, and then we come up with kind of a lease rate or an agreement with her to use it on a per month basis or whatever it may be. Again, these are some of the questions that were posed to me from some supervisors. I only heard from two out of all the supervisors, I think, regarding any of this. I hadn't heard from anybody else. If anybody else has any other questions, I can try to answer them, but I think it's back in her lap to maybe come up with some other options moving forward with a proposal.
All right, very good. If there's a change, you'll report back to us, correct?
Yes, I will.
Okay, very good. With that, I think we can move on to Public Works, I believe. Is that the end of Parks and Rec?
That is the end of Parks and Rec.
Okay, without objection, then I think we should move right into DPW, given the hour. Kevin, what do we have here?
We have a lot. So most of you supervisors, or all of you supervisors, receive every month and it just came through this morning from Mr. Lynch as far as the budget analysis, and we've had quite a few projects on there. Corinth Road, Quaker Road signals, railroad track restoration, Tannery Road bridge over Stony Creek that they've been asking us to kind of close out those projects. Date of last activity on a lot of them has been 3, 4, 5, some even almost 10 years ago. So we had gone through each one of the projects. We had looked at closing each one of the projects and then what we would need to do to kind of make the county budget whole. Some of that was to transfer some of the cash out of those projects into the transfers to capital projects and then take that money to basically make the projects whole. There's at least 3 projects on here, and we'll get to that resolution shortly, that had some federal state money that was still owed, but we have reached out to the state and we're not going to receive that money. So that would be to write off the non-receivables. But again, we have the money as cash in some of the projects to be able to write off the state and federal receivables.
Okay, let's try to knock these off, Kevin, as quickly as we can.
Yeah, then that's what I'm going to do. So I'll start with the first one. The first one is the authorizer or closure of capital projects. You'll see on that one there are 5 projects listed: Corinth Road, Quaker Road signals, railroad tracks, actually 6 projects, Tannery Bridge over Stony Creek, the Lake George Environmental Park, and the Brant Lake Lower Dam. So this authorization would close those and move the money back to their fund source that's left in them.
You've heard the request. Do we have a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration? Mr. Leggett on the motion, second. Mr. Bruno on the second. Any questions for Mr. Hajos? Mr. Leggett.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I'm looking at what Rob Lynch sent through this morning. And for example, Brant Lake Lower Dam has no cash to it. Last activity was 2015, but you have 6,000. So these are, there's still something out there otherwise.
Yeah, this is estimated funds that were still in the project. And as he says, there's no cash value, but we cleared all these closing of projects through Rob in the treasurer's office last week, and he was the one that provided the numbers to us.
Thank you.
Very good. Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of approving the closure of these capital projects signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item, Kevin.
Next item would be the increase to transfers to capital projects. And it would be in the amount of $65,482, which is going to come from of course, the revenue code of 6542. And this comes from the Corinth Road, basically to close out of the Corinth Road and a couple of the other projects. They have to go into different fund sources. One will go into D9950 and the other one will go into the general fund transfer to capital project, which is A9950.
Okay, Chair, I'll entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration.
Yeah.
Who did I hear?
Supervisor McGowan.
Supervisor McGowan on the motion, second. Mr. Bruno on the second. Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Any further discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the request to amend the county budget signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Next item.
The next one is similar to the one I just did. That was the increase to D9950. Now this is the increase to A9950 with the closure of those projects.
I'll entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration by the committee. Ms. Hogan on the motion. Second. Mr. Bruno on the second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leggett?
Just for clarification, education. So the other was the highway fund. This is general fund. So funds came through general fund for this project?
It did.
Okay. Thank you.
Are we ready for the question? All those in favor on this request to amend the county budget signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Request to amend the capital project H199 Corinth Road. Chair, I'll entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration.
Supervisor McGowan.
Superman McGowan on the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Bruno on the second, Supervisor Bruno on the second. Any questions for the commissioner on this? Superintendent Hajos on this? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the requested capital amendment to project H199 Corinth Road signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 7, request to amend capital project H200 Quaker Road signal improvements. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Ms. Bramer on the motion, second. Mr. Leggett on the second. What do we have here, Kevin?
This again goes back to all the projects that we're doing the closeout on. Basically, what we're doing is there's a fund in there that was a receivable we did not receive from the state, which we basically have to cover. So this decreases the state share by 11,000, and then we're doing a local match transfer from D9950 to cover that $11,000 non-receivable from the state.
Alrighty then. We're ready for the question. All those in favor of the requested capital amendment for project H200 Quaker Road signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Item 8, request to increase capital project H200 Quaker Road signal improvements. Let's bring this to the floor for consideration. Can I have a motion on item 8? Supervisor Bramer, and on the second, Supervisor Hogan on the second. Kevin, what do we have here?
The last Quaker signal was the state we're getting the receivable from the state. This one was the project had a deficit fund balance, and that fund balance was $136,647.43. I know Mike Swan's on here. If he could talk a little bit more about it, he's more than welcome to. But again, we have the money in A9950, D9950, which we transferred out of the other projects to cover that deficit in the fund balance. So this would cover that cost. And allow us to close the project.
All right, you've heard the motion, you've heard the explanation. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 8 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Item 9, request to amend capital project H219 railroad track restoration. Chair will entertain a motion to bring item 9 to the floor for consideration. I was wondering if that was a stretch or a motion there, Claudia. Is that a yes? There's a motion from Ms. Bramer. Is there a second? Leggett on the second. What do we have here, Kevin?
This one is I apologize, my phone's ringing. This one was, again, it's a non-receivable from the state. I think it was the last reimbursement that we're not going to receive a reimbursement for. It was for $534. So again, this decreases the federal share by a certain amount and the state share by its amount, and this would be covered under the local match, which would be transferred from A99. And this would allow us to close the project.
Okay, we're ready for the question then. All those in favor of item 9, railroad track restoration, H219, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 10, amend capital project H258, Warrensburg Road Bridge Project. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Ms. Hogan on the motion, second. Mr. Bruno on the second. Thank you, Supervisor Bruno on the second. Kevin, what do we have here?
Again, this is similar to the rest of them with that original closeout and moving money back to the funding sources. This was a non-receivable from the state as well. This one was a little bit different. I just want a quick explanation for this one. We had 2 projects going at the same time. One of them was the Tannery Road Bridge, and the other one was the Gristmill Bridge. Back in 2008-9, the state provided the feds provided that stimulus package, which combined both these projects into one project, and it turned into 100% federally funded. Well, this was still a reimbursement to the state for $63,000 that somewhere. And I will tell you, it was not on our end, got lost in the mix. But the state came back, said after they converted it to the stimulus 100% federally funded project, they were not going to reimburse us for this amount. So this was, 63,000 that we lost on that project, but it was not due to us. It was due to the state. We've asked numerous times to ask them for the reimbursement, but each time it's come back saying, no, we've closed the project out. So again, we have the money under the transfers that I did in the beginning to cover this local match and decrease the federal and state shares. So this will cover that amount and close out the project.
All right, you've heard the motion and the explanation. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again for education and clarification on this. So for example, the negative 53,000 from the federal, that's because the project did not cost as much as was expected, so we did not spend as much?
No, the federal decrease, and then you see the state share, Supervisor Leggett, these are the 80-15-5 projects. So basically what we're doing is we're decreasing the federal share, which is 80%, decreasing the state share for the 15%, and then increasing the local share, which is us, to cover that non-reimbursable from the state.
I thought the federal share was 100%.
The federal share did, when it went to construction for the two bridges, it did turn into 100% federally funded. This 63,000 was still under the design phase, which was an 80-15-5 phase.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of amending capital project H258 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 11, to write off state and federal receivables on capital projects. Let's bring this to the floor for consideration. I need a motion to bring this forward. Ms. Bramer, is that a yes?
Sure.
Is that a yes? Aye. Thank you. Supervisor Bruno on the second. Kevin, what do we have here?
So this is basically to write off any of those receivables or non-receivables that the state is not, or the feds are not going to pay us. So Corinth Road, just to put it in perspective, it's $22,000. Every time we submit a reimbursement, we always, I don't want to say run the risk. I think we have a much better understanding of it now, but these were a lot of older projects. There was always costs that were not covered under the federal aid program. It could have been in any one of the reimbursements that we had, $1,000 here, $500 here. I can tell you for Corinth Road, it was a $23 million project, and we got reimbursed for all of it except this $22,000. And again, there was probably 23 reimbursement submittals. So it could have been for just non-eligible expenses. We don't have that anymore today. We have a pretty good feeling, and again, these were old, very old projects. We have a pretty good feeling with the staff that I have now, including myself, knowing what is reimbursable expenses and what is non-reimbursable. So again, older projects, I'll go down to Quaker Road Signals. That project started and stopped even before I started here. That $11,000 was just a certain amount of money that the state did not reimburse us for. Railroad track restoration was just ending when I came here. And that was, I think, the last reimbursement didn't get submitted in because there was a question regarding $125,000 deposit with the state. That has since been covered under our budget, but we're still waiting for some paperwork on that $125,000. But again, it took forever to get a lot of that work done, and the state said on our end that project is closed. And I just explained the Tanner Bridge over Stony Creek. It was between when they were federally funded 80-15-5 and then went to the 100% federal funded stimulus projects, and something there got lost in the mix.
Okay.
So this is writing them all off.
Okay. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 11 to write off state and federal receivables on capital projects signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Item 12, increase capital project H384 Horkin Avenue, Finkelbrook Bridge. Chair will entertain a motion to bring item 12 to the floor for consideration.
So
Ms.
moved.
Kramer, Ms. Hogan on the second. Kevin, what do we have here?
So this is our one of our Bridge New York projects. It's kind of an 11 bridge over Finkelbrook. Based on the estimates that we have, we feel that we need to add some funding in there, a local share for anticipated construction costs of approximately $23,000. Now, I will preface this with, we believe we may not use all of this for construction costs because we're also working with Soil and Water on some funding they have. Since Finkelbrook is a feed into Lake George, there may be some funding under their watershed program that may cover all this cost anyways. But we're anticipating there be an increased capital or construction cost, and that's why we're adding the $23,000 into that project.
You've heard the motion, you've heard the explanation. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the request to increase capital project H384 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 13, request notice of intent to fill a vacant position. Kevin, due to retirement.
Yeah, I'll go through 13, 14, and 15 because I can just kind of combine them all together. These are notice of intent to fill positions in my department. The MEO light number 27 due to retirement. This individual just retired from the county. So I'm looking to backfill that position. The other MEO light was one of the ones that we had back in March that the individual was promoted. So that opened a position of a light, which again, based on the austerity plan that we had put together, I held off on this position. But moving forward into winter months, especially in the plowing, these two positions are key in as individuals who will plow roads for me during this winter. I don't want to have to cut down any plow routes or anything like that. So I do need to backfill these positions for that. And again, on the one, the MEO light 2, I held off until now. The other one is the engineer 2 position, and you'll see that you allowed me to backfill this back in February, March, and then COVID hit. So I held off on the plan that I had submitted to Ryan, that I could hold off in this position until August 1st. As it is right now, we're looking for the right individual to fill this position in engineering. The person has to have a fair amount of experience. So we will do not just a local search, but kind of a nationwide search for fill this position. So I don't expect to backfill this one before October 1st either. I'd be lucky to backfill this one by the beginning of the year, but at least we want to get the feelers out there to see what we have. So that would be the notice of intent.
All right. The MEO position, though, is 13, 14, and 15. Is that correct?
The MEO is the 13 and, or I believe 12 and 13, or 13 and 14, and then the engineer 2 is 15.
All right. Let's take these one at a time. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the MEO position, which would be items 13 and 14. Moved by Mr. Leggett to bring that to the floor for consideration. Second. Ms. Bramer on the second. I only have one question. Kevin is, everybody's, are you going to be able to fill this position? I mean, MEO positions are very difficult to find people. Everybody's competing.
They are, and I hate to say this, but I'm competing against the towns because typically they pay more than what the county does. With that being said, I have some temporaries that we brought in this summer, and I'm hoping, that I can bring on these temporaries who've been with my guys during the summer, but they'll get the one person, the OPP training for the winter months. I have a couple good candidates that came on to work for us this summer as temporaries, and they're doing a phenomenal job. So I'm hoping that they would be the ones to put in for these MEO positions.
Okay. All right. You've heard the motion. You've heard the explanation for items 13 and 14. I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving items 13 and 14 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Item 15, notice of intent to fill a vacant position. And is item 15 connected with 17, Kevin?
17 is different. So when
I thought so. Let's deal with item 15, notice of intent to fill a vacant position. Chair will entertain a motion, bring this to the floor for consideration.
Mr. McGowan.
Mr. McGowan on the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bruno. What do we have here, Kevin?
Well, again, this is the engineer 2 position, which you had giving me approval to fill back in February, March. And then of course, COVID hit, and Ryan had reached out to all the department heads regarding putting, kind of a, what can you produce for a savings in your budgets for the year, basically that austerity plan. And I said that I would not backfill this position of the engineer 2, and I would hold off at least till August 1st. August 1st is come and gone. And again, I don't think I will be able to backfill it right away because we're looking for the right person in there with the right criteria to fill that position. So, but then again, you had already given me an approval for this position then, but it's past the 6 months, so I'm asking for it again.
Right. You've heard the motion. You've heard the explanation. Ms. Bramer.
I know you're not going to like this, but what is up with the second engineer 2?
I don't have a second engineer 2. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
There's 2 forms there.
The second one is just an attachment to show that you already gave me approval for this position back in February, March.
Okay, and there's not 2, just the 1, and that other sheet is backup. And this is to my disappointment, the engineer who will not be doing environmental issues like we had before.
Well, and Claudia, you and I talked about this. This is not a person this person, as part of the requirements, will have to have environmental background. So
Oh, they will? Okay.
Yes, that's what we kind of put in there as part of the back. I mean, the problem that we have is and the previous environmental analyst did a lot of great work for us, but she was very strong in environmental and getting there in design. But the majority of my work is 20% environmental, 80% engineering.
Yeah, so you need someone with a flipped focus.
I do.
I got you.
And I think with the requirements we have in there, and Ed and I, my senior civil engineer, spoke about this one, we're going to find the right who has that well-rounded background to be able to do both.
Great, cool. Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Okay. Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of filling this position signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 17, request to create a new position of a construction specialist. Is 19 related to this? And then fill it. Is that what you're showing, Kevin?
So yeah, 17, 18, and 19 are all together. That's correct.
17, 18, and 19. Kevin, just give us a quick explanation of what this is.
So right now, I'm currently down, I guess I want to say 3 staff within my engineering department. We had taken one of those staff, which I think was the assistant engineer 1. I think I have it on the first one, to create the staff of the engineer 2 position. Then we had still left over the environmental analyst and the grade 14 and the senior engineering tech, which is the grade 12. What I'm proposing to do is take those 2 positions, the senior engineering tech position, as well as the remainder of the money in the environmental analyst, create a position of a construction specialist. Reason being is, and I've talked about this in the past, and I've talked about it with Ryan as well. I've been doing an overhaul of the engineering department to find the right staff, the right fit for the type of work that we do. Typically, the person that I have come in for the senior engineering tech position is great when it comes to doing some of the tasks that we need to do in the field, which is basically construction inspection, construction oversight on any county type of projects, as well as helping all of our crews that they may come across something in the field that they need assistance on it from the engineering department. And that is typically my person out there to assist them. The fact is that person, we bring them in the winter months, at least the tech position, didn't have enough of, and there wasn't enough of a requirement in the job to have them come in and do design work. My winter months involve a lot of design and prep going in for the following year. So this position here would be just that. Any county programs, construction projects that engineer needs to be involved with, or any just our road projects now that we're putting them out to contractors. This person here would basically be the oversight of that. But this person we also have as part of the job description is to have some type of design background, whether it's so kind of a project engineer 3 that a consulting firm would have who has some construction inspection experience. But that's what this person would do. They would design in the winter months, and they would basically be my eyes and ears in the field oversight of construction projects in the summer month. If you look at the table on that second page, you'll see what the current organization was, and then what I'm proposing for the new organization moving forward. And you'll see, even with that, I've still produced a reduction in salary by $8,000 overall for that engineering department.
All right, let's see if we can bring this to the floor for further discussion. Mr. Leggett on the motion. Do we have a second?
Supervisor McGowan.
Supervisor McGowan on the second. Any further discussion or questions for Superintendent Hajos? Mr. Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superintendent Hajos, this looks good, thinking through how to best organize the office. You have a lot going on in there. And when you say construction, is that road construction, road, bridge, and building?
Yeah, mainly road and bridge. Some of that will involve building. I think for the engineer 2 that we're gonna, if you allow me to backfill, that would be the one who would maybe be more geared with some building background as well. But again, most consulting firms, I mean, honestly, that's what I hope to grab. I hope to grab somebody from a consulting engineering firm to bring them in here. They'll have that background. Most consulting firms today, me coming from one, you have a well-rounded background of working in many different parts of construction, whether it be road and bridge. But next year alone, just to kind of give an update, next year alone, I have $22 million in federal aid project that'll go into construction next year. So having these individuals will be a lot of oversight on those projects. Although we use consultants for those, we still need that project level managing of those projects as well.
All right, you've heard the motion to create for 17 and 19 on your agenda to create and fill the vacant position of a construction specialist. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 20, request to amend the county budget for the purchase of a mobile brine unit. Chair will entertain a motion, bring this to the floor for consideration.
Supervisor McGowan.
Supervisor McGowan on the motion. Do we have a second? Supervisor Bruno on the second. There's been quite a bit of discussion about this already, but very quickly, Kevin, can you tell us what we have here?
This is just to amend the budget for the $98,000 that it will cost us for that. As you know, 72,000 of that, 72,000 and change of that is being provided by the New York State Department of State grant, and the rest is being the rest of the funding is coming from the local towns and or Washington County who wanted to be part of this mobile brine unit. Again, we will come up with agreements later on to allow each of the towns and or Washington County to use this mobile brine making piece of equipment. But this is just to kind of get the money in place and amend a budget for them.
Just for clarity of the record, for the Mr. McGowan, and I think it was Mr. Bruno on the second, that this includes item 20 and 21, which would include the to accept the equipment and to also provide appropriate thank you letters.
Well, actually, Chairman Conrad, that 21 is a little bit different. I'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, okay. So just for item 20. All right, very good. Let me call the question on 20 then. All those in favor of approving item 20 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Kevin, item 21.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, quick follow-up on that. And this mobile brine would also be available to subscribing towns within the county?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And maybe some towns and adjoining counties as well.
That's correct.
What do we have here on item 21?
So as I spoke with in last committee, the Fund for Lake George has also been gracious enough to give us funding for a stationary brine unit,
All right.
which we will keep here in our Warrensburg, in our Tony pit located here in Warrensburg. Actually, it's in Lake George. This will be a stationary unit which will not go around. This will be a stationary unit to fill the, I believe we have 5, possibly 6 3,000-gallon tanks there with brine, and it'll be used on site there. I believe the town of Hague is getting one of these as well, and the fund is paying for the cost of theirs. So no cost to the county, and we will take possession of this stationary unit sometime mid to late September, and we will be trained on it probably within that same time frame, and it'll be up for operation filling our tanks by October 1.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. Do we have a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration?
Supervisor McGowan, I'd like to have a moment to speak on this.
Absolutely. Let's get the motion. Mr. Bruno on the second. Now I'm back to you, Mr. McGowan. Supervisor McGowan, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Kevin, since we're getting so much equipment in the brining, I'm thinking with all the private snow plowing and some of these areas of concern of the lake, the big driveways, the bigger parking lots, the hotels and stuff like that, they might be done. Do we have a potential to be able to make some and sell some brine to these plowing companies that might be willing to use a brine? Because it's really a great idea to get this down on any road surface before the snow, so you're using less later on.
Yeah, I guess I would pose that question back to the board. I'm not sure that we'd be in the main business of making brine for private, but that's not, I don't think, a decision I can make. We will make enough. I mean, not all the towns have tanks yet. Some towns only have tanks on the back of the truck. We were fortunate enough with some of the grant funding that planning department had, and through the Fund of Lake George, that we were able to purchase the 3,000-gallon tanks. Others were able to purchase the tanks for the back of their equipment. Private companies can buy brine right now if they use it from other private companies, but I'm just not sure that we'd be in the business of selling brine to others. I guess if we could, I never even thought of it that way. If we can look into seeing if that's even feasible, I guess I can look into that. I'm just not sure that it is.
Thank you.
Okay, you've heard the question, the explanation. Any further discussion, Ms. Bramer?
Thanks. Kevin, in this the letter from August 5th that's provided, it talks about some Warren County obligations. I don't think we're necessarily obligated to those things, but are we prepared to cooperate in moving forward with whatever needs to be done?
Yeah, we can go through them real quick. One of them is to provide electricity. We do have electricity at that pit, and I also have water there as well. The next one is a pre-season purchase of projected season salt. No, I'm not. We are going to use solar salt in this because there's no residuals left over. It uses, when we make brine with solar salt, use all this salt. When you make brine, which we will in the mobile unit with just normal white salt, there will be some residuals left over, which we can just put back into the salt pile. But it's contaminants in reality that just won't dilute in the solution. So we'll have to remove from the unit. But I can't pre-season purchase salt from this de-icing depot. That's not the way our procurement policy works. But I will procure through OGS solar salt to be used in this piece of equipment.
Okay, do these people know that, these de-icing depot people?
They do. I spoke with them already on the phone.
Okay, because I don't want them to then tell the fund, well, you're not going to get this nice deal because the county isn't necessarily going to buy through you.
Yeah, if they don't want to give it to the fund, then we still have the mobile brine making unit to be used. But I'm going to get solar salt the way we have to go about getting it, and that's, I've already talked to Julie about it. We can procure it through OGS.
Okay, how about this payment? What is that about?
That's not us. That would be the town of Hague, as you see on that letter.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, then. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of accepting the equipment and the donation by the fund, and also to provide them a big thank you letter, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. What are we moving to? Referral items now, Kevin?
We are moving to, yes, I believe items for discussion. But we have one thing under discussion items, and I have on there just a little note that says added bridge to inventory. We were approached by Chairman Thomas quite some time ago about a bridge that they had called the Gill Road Bridge over in Stony Creek. We had checked back in some of our archives that we had here, that basically a letter from one of the previous superintendents that said that that was not a county-owned bridge. It was a private bridge. Yet the fact of the matter is the bridge had a BIN number on it. We actually did some further investigation recently and determined that a resolution was passed back in, hang on a minute, 1955. And it was a resolution authorizing maintenance of bridges on town highways. As most of you know, the county has 57 bridges, of which maybe half of them are on town highways. The resolution goes on to read that resolve that the County of Warren, pursuant to subdivision 10 of section 231 of the highway law, take over the maintenance of all bridges having a span of more than 25 feet and located on any town highway in the county. With that resolution, this bridge should have fallen under Warren County's purview. I don't want any towns to get the feeling now that if they have any other bridges over 25 feet that we would, especially any newer ones, that we would take them. There happened to have been a bridge in the town of Lake George, probably, well, I want to say almost 10 years ago now, that there was a request by the town supervisor, actually not a request, a statement made by a town supervisor that that bridge should be run by the county or taken over by the county because the existing bridge was in poor shape. So they purposely built a bridge like 26 feet long on top of that bridge. The way the highway law reads today is that any bridges have to go through the approval of the superintendent of public works if they were to take them over. But this one was a resolution passed in 1955, and that bridge was around then. So Gill Road Bridge has now been added to the county's inventory of bridges based on this resolution. And we will start doing some maintenance. DOT will still inspect the bridge because it has a BIN number on it. And they always have. We will start taking over the maintenance of this bridge, and it will not fall under the town of Stony Creek anymore. And I think Frank is more than happy to give me that bridge.
Yes, I am. I've been telling you that for years.
Okay, do you need any kind of motion here, or is it that you're just informing us that it is our responsibility?
I'm just informing you that we have an added bridge onto our inventory now.
Okay, good. Now, do you need anything on item, what is that, item 4?
That was item 4, I believe we went through. That was the added bridge to inventory. Now we're on to referral and pending items.
Yeah, referral and pending items. Maybe I've got an old agenda. What do you have under referral and pending items?
So under referral and pending items, I talked to the committee last month about the retaining wall in the Sagamore. I informed the committee last month that we were going to have a meeting with the stakeholders, which included Water's Edge Marina, the Sagamore, and the town of Bolton, on moving forward what we were going to do with the retaining wall. We had our consultant, JMP, provide us with a evaluation of the existing wall, and then kind of steps moving forward, what we should be looking at. There were, I can tell you there were 4 alternatives. The first one was a do nothing alternative, but that's not going to suffice because we need to do something to that retaining wall. One of the things that was asked as part of this was, hey, how about saving the existing wall there? If most of you have seen the pictures, the existing wall up there, it's basically built on round cobble. I guess the easiest way for me to explain it is stack a bunch of marbles on top of one another and then pull out one of the bottom ones and see what happens. That's basically what has happened. The bridge has lasted this long, or I'm sorry, the wall has lasted this long, but it's reached its point. Most of that wall, 70 feet on that north side of of the road, has either pushed out, so it's no longer tapered back anymore towards the roadway. It's actually pushing towards the lake, and that's due to water, ice, and freeze that gets down into those rocks and move those rocks during freeze thaw seasons. So they had three proposals as part of this. The three proposals that we could do as part of this repair of that wall. The first one is to put in a precast concrete block retaining wall and taper that back towards the roadway. This would involve us moving into the lake by approximately 12 feet to place this wall. That means we would be under permitting of the Lake George Park Commission, APA, DEC, Army Corps of Engineers. I'm not sure who else I might have missed. And there would probably be a lot of environmental groups that would have their say as well. But again, this would be us digging basically into the lake 12 feet away from the base of the existing wall, putting in a foundation, and then building this precast concrete wall back up, filling in behind this concrete wall with fill material, and then again stabilizing the existing roadway from up above. The next one is a poured type of retaining wall. That one would involve, again, the same thing, almost 12 feet into the lake, digging down, putting in a foundation, pouring a concrete wall, and then backfilling behind that wall to support the existing road. The final one that we would have would be to put in soldier pile walls. I don't have a good picture to show you what it is, but basically soldier pile and wall is to either drill in columns or push columns into the existing, basically down into the existing bedrock. And then between the columns, you would pour concrete. And doing it that way, we could do it at the base of the existing wall and not work ourselves into the lake. Doesn't mean that we won't have any permitting that was needed in place, but the permitting will still be there. It's just less intrusive to water's edge, less intrusive to the lake, less intrusive to the Sagamore. A lot of that work can be done during the winter months. Some of the other ones you have to be more into the summer months, which would impact the Sagamore as well as our water's edge significantly. So going through the cost, I actually just went into my budget meeting last week and saying that cost alone for that is almost the soldier piling is about $1 million. But $1 million that would include all the engineering and permitting to get in place as well. It seems like extremely high cost, but to repair that entire 70-foot of wall, it is not. It's the other two proposals, the first one and second one that I explained, those costs are less. They're probably both of them in about $500,000 range. They will be more intrusive. They will probably severely impact water's edge because their docks that they have in place right now through the Lake George Park Commission, which are permitted, come up to the base of my wall. If we put that extra 12 feet of wall in, that'll push their dock so they can't use that area anymore. It'll be an impact to them, and I believe they've already said that it's significantly impacted them now that they've lost a certain amount of money. I'm not sure if they'll be putting in a claim, but I believe they'll be putting in a claim against the county. So again, I know the cost of the soldier piling is a little more expensive. My recommendation is it's the better route to take. I'm not asking for any money for the construction portion of that right now. What I would do is ask for money. We're working with JMT right now, who is our consultant, on engineering cost. With the engineering costs, we believe are going to be somewhere in the vicinity of about $100,000. So I checked whether or not I had that money in my contracts. I do not. I don't have enough in my contracts to cover that cost. So I'm requesting right now that the committee give me approval and even to move forward with the scoping process of them to get a contract in place. And then from there, once we get a better estimate, which could be less than the $1 million that I've stated, I'm sorry, probably $900,000 because $100,000 would be the engineering cost. It may be less than that. They haven't put that full scope together yet. Those were just estimates based on what they evaluated out in the field. A couple of the other things that we're running up against with this is I don't see an imminent failure right away, but if we get in one of our 500-year storms that we have been getting, we could lose the remainder of that wall, which would lose the roadway to the Sagamore, which would impact the existing water line and sewer line that does feed the Sagamore. If that water line, and the water line I'm not more concerned about, but the sewer line, if that sewer line breaks because of losing the roadway, we stand a chance of that sewer line impacting the lake by putting sewer into the lake. And I don't think that's anything any of us want to have happen. And the south side, based on the evaluation, is probably in a little bit better shape because it's been rebuilt so many times over the years. Even when they rebuilt the bridge to the Sagamore, that whole south side had a concrete cap poured across that entire rock wall, which saved that wall from any type of collapse on that side. And it's also, when they did any replacement of stone on that side, they put in angular stone, which does not have a tendency to act like marbles when you pull out, one of the ones on the bottom. So I guess I'm asking the committee, one, to proceed with the soldier pile design, and two is to proceed with getting the engineer moving as quickly as possible, which would require me putting $100,000 into contracts to be able to cover that cost.
Where would that money come from, Kevin?
I would have to say the fund balance. I don't know that contingency would have enough in there to cover this.
Is Kevin Garrity on the call? Do we know?
He just left the room.
Okay. Frank, I see you're on the call. Frank, would you agree that a transfer like this would have to come from the fund balance as opposed to the contingency?
Who, DPW's fund balance?
Kevin, you want to respond?
I don't have a fund balance to cover that.
Yeah, I would agree.
You would agree,
Bolton's
Ryan?
got the money. Get it from Bolton.
Ryan, do you concur with that?
Unless the Sagamore is feeling particularly generous today, I concur with that.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. All right. The request then and the motion that would be needed is to move forward with the recommended option and to transfer from the Warren County fund balance $100,000 to the project to move it forward.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Bruno. Do we have a second? Andrea Hogan, Supervisor Hogan on the second. Any other questions for Superintendent Hajos?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leggett.
Thank you. As we get this started, would any of this perhaps be reimbursable of the engineering, the upfront engineering?
Most likely not. This was not due to any storm event. It was just we might have had some rain, not a significant rain, but it was enough to cause again pulling out that lower marble, causing this wall to collapse in that area. Craig, I thought about that. I kind of wish it was due to an event. We would have been covered under FEMA or something like that, but this was not due to any of those events.
Okay.
I should add, one of the things we're looking at on Paid Nerum is if we can make that county bridge work on Paid Nerum, then the town will purchase that bridge from the county, which would help his budget enormously. We're talking fairly expensive structure. So if we can make that bridge, the county's bridge work on Paid Neuron, we'll be happy to purchase that from the county. And I think we're working on that now, aren't we, Kevin?
We are, and that would put back a little over $100,000 into my budget.
So,
Okay.
and we're happy to do that if it fits. All right, well, we've heard the motion. Any further discussion?
Once again, Mr. Chairman, just
Mr. Leggett?
thank you for education and clarification. The DPW does not carry any fund balance. They get appropriated from the A fund. Is that how this works at the county level? They don't have their own separate, like our towns do?
County Administrator Ryan?
End of the year, we empty those fund balances in the outside funds down to, I believe it's 5%. If there's the treasurer's on, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we maintain 5% when we do the year-end close. And everything above and beyond that, including if the fund itself has a budgetary deficit, we'll budget a transfer from the general fund to make that fund whole.
Thank you.
All right, then, are we ready for the question? And the only thing I would add is, Kevin, I know is that I don't like the look of that wall. I hope we can move forward with all dispatch. We're very vulnerable in that location, as you know. And I might add, it includes the utilities, electric also. I know you mentioned water, but electric is there. It's the only access to Green Island. It's a big deal.
I
All
would,
right, then, you've
I
heard the
agree.
question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Anything else to come before us today, Kevin?
No, that's all I have.
That's it? That's enough. All right, any other business? Don, do we have any callers?
No, Chairman Conover, no public comment on today's festivities.
Okay, we probably wore them out. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Leggett on a motion to adjourn, Ms. Bramer on the second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.